retired Colonel Mark Kansian. He's a senior advisor of Defense and Security Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And he joins us from Arlington, Virginia. Thank you very much for joining us, Colonel. So the threats, pressure, and ultimatums have come and gone. And it seems Mr. Putin got the summit he wanted. Just how much of a strategic win is this for the Kremlin? And what might Putin's goal be at the summit?
Well, we'll see what comes out of the summit, but going in, they're caused to be nervous. The Russians think that they're winning the war, and they believe that time is on their side. They are going in demanding control over the two provinces in the Donbass, and they're not proposing, it appears, to give up any territory. The Ukrainians may not be in the meeting itself, although the Europeans are pushing that very hard, and that's concerning because their interests may not be covered. So, and further, President Trump really wants a deal. He has promised to end this war, and the concern is that he might give away too much.
It's good that you mentioned the Donbass, because I want to ask you, what do you foresee in a possible peace deal surrounding territorial swaps? President Trump has hinted that peace might involve some swapping of territories, which Ukraine and its European allies firmly reject.
Well, the Ukrainians don't want to give up any territory, even though the Russians have occupied about 18% of the country. There's a section of the Donbass, the two provinces there, that the Russians have not occupied and that they want to take control over. And that's what they might try to bargain over. There had been some thought that maybe the Russians would give up some territory in the south, maybe some sort of exchange. But it's not clear that that's, in fact, what the Russians meant. The Ukrainians do control a corner of Russia still, and the Russians have a bit of Ukraine in the north that they might give back, but it doesn't come close to the size of what the Russians are asking for in the Donbass.
Colonel, Europe is really coming together to get behind Ukraine as we speak, and their big concern is that President Trump might make agreements on Russia's demands of recognition of annexed regions. What do you see likely happening here? And will President Trump risk alienating his Western allies if he does propose a deal on this matter?
Well, that's the concern, that President Trump wants a deal so badly that he makes a bad deal. It's a little hard to say at this point because the summit is not for another 4 or 5 days. We'll see what the buildup to that looks like. One of the concerning items also is that usually when there's a summit, the staffs have already worked out most of the agreement, and the leaders just top it off and make the final handshake. That doesn't appear to have occurred here. They were trying to do that with the U.S. envoy to Russia, but there's a lot of confusion. So going into the discussion, at least at this point, not really clear what sort of bargain is on the table.
Okay, and Colonel, VP Vance said a meeting between Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky wouldn't be productive before President Trump sits down with Putin. And what's your take on the sequencing of these talks? And what does it tell you about the U.S. approach to these negotiations?
Well, it would be best if Ukraine were in the talk, so it was a three-way talk since it concerns Ukraine. But having Ukraine talk to President Putin directly is at least a good step. The great concern is that the Ukrainians get left out of this entirely, and therefore their interests aren't taken care of.
Okay. As for Mr. Zelensky, I mean, he's ruled out ceding territory in Russia. He warned that decisions without Ukraine would not bring peace. What are the options that he has if the U.S. agrees to an unfavorable outcome for Kyiv?
President Zelensky is in a very unfortunate situation. The military war is not going terribly well for Ukraine, and President Trump has shown that he will pressure Ukraine and any of his adversaries into agreements that they may not want. Now, the Europeans have been very strong supporters of Ukraine. They've been arming Ukraine and supporting Ukraine diplomatically. They may be able to help Ukraine get a better deal. It may be that they make some small step at this negotiation on Friday and then put off the big decisions for later. That might be a helpful step, some sort of reduction in maybe the level of violence, maybe some prisoner exchanges. That would be better than a bad deal.
Colonel, you may be the best person to talk about the battlefield dynamics. We are hearing reports of Russian strikes in Zaporizhia, the Ukrainian drone attacks in Moscow as well. In terms of war dynamics and realities on the ground, just how might this upcoming summit affect the war's momentum on the battlefield?
Well, unfortunately, it probably won't affect very much unless they come to some sort of agreement to reduce the level of violence. There's been a little talk about an agreement, a ceasefire on long-range strikes. But what we've seen is what's been going on for many months now. That is, on the ground, the Russians have continued their attacks in about half a dozen areas along the front, and they continue to chew away at Ukrainian territory, making some gains at immense cost, but still making gains and inflicting casualties on the Ukrainians. They push the Ukrainians out of Russia in the Kursk area when the Ukrainians had pushed in there. The Ukrainians have been very resourceful in striking deep into Russia. Of course, they had this drone attack that was very resourceful and really one for the history books. But they've continually attacked at long range airfields, oil facilities, and that sort of thing. That might put some pressure on Russia to end the war, although at this point it doesn't look like it will be enough to make Putin believe that ending the war is better than continuing it.
Colonel, if you don't mind, your reaction, please, to last night's world press release from Benjamin Netanyahu. Reports, of course, that Trump gave Israel the green light to take over Gaza City. How might this endorsement impact the prospects for a ceasefire or a negotiated settlement? Plus, of course, can Israel realistically retrieve the remaining 20 hostages that they want back alive after their declaration of military expansion?
The Israelis are in a difficult position because they really want their hostages back. There's a tremendous emotional push in Israel to get them back. Hamas knows that if it gives up the hostages, it has no more leverage over the Israelis. So they're going to hold on to the hostages. They want Israel out of Gaza entirely. The Israelis have said that they're going to occupy Gaza City. That was apparently a compromise within the Israeli government. Netanyahu wanted to occupy the entire Gaza Strip. The army only wanted to surround Gaza City and attack targets that were identified, not try to occupy it. Looking long term, there's been talk about possibly getting an Arab coalition to occupy Gaza. For Israel, the United States, that would be the perfect solution, but no Arab country has been willing to step up. Israel could occupy the entire Gaza Strip. It did that before, probably not going to be successful long term. It could just pull back and treat Gaza as a failed state. Of course, the risk there is that Hamas will rebuild. So the alternatives are not very attractive.
Thanks for listing out those scenarios for us. Appreciate your time. Retired Colonel Mark Kansian, Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you for joining us.